Have you heard Dreamlarking's whimsical remix of Emily Dickinson's I Heard a Fly Buzz When I Died?
Oh, yeah, I have.
It's talk about an unexpected mashup.
Yeah.
Dickinson's poem set to this blend of metalcore, goth, A&D hyperpop.
Right?
It's wild,
Yeah.
but somehow it works.
What's fascinating is how the music mirrors the duality in so much of Dickinson's work.
Yeah.
You know, that playful curiosity about death,
Yeah.
but also a deep, almost morbid fascination.
Yeah.
It's like Dreamlarking saw right through her carefully crafted persona and into the heart of her poetry.
Right, and the video. Anime-inspired visuals, a carriage ride straight out of Because I Could Not Stop for Death.
Oh, yeah.
A woman transforming into an angel.
Wow.
Like a visual anthology of her most haunting imagery. Did you catch the feather motif?
I did.
A nod to hope is the thing with feathers, maybe.
Definitely. Dreamlarking isn't just remixing the poem, he's creating a dialogue with Dickinson's entire body of work.
Yeah.
He's inviting us to reconsider her not as this reclusive figure shrouded in mystery.
Yeah.
As a poet who grappled with life's big questions in a way that's both unsettling and strangely alluring.
Okay, so let's unpack this. For those who maybe haven't spent hours poring over her fascicles like some of us,
Right.
can we start with some context? Who was Emily Dickinson?
Well, she was born in 1830 in Amherst, Massachusetts, and lived there pretty much her entire life.
Okay.
She was a prolific writer, but only published about 10 poems before her death in 1886.
Wow.
It was her sister, Lavinia, who discovered her treasure trove of nearly 1,800 poems after she passed.
Talk about leaving a legacy. I mean, imagine if those poems had never been found.
Yeah.
But this reclusiveness, it's part of what makes her so intriguing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It feeds this image of the woman in white, the mysterious figure who chose to withdraw from society and pour all her energy into her writing.
Yeah.
But the reclusiveness isn't the whole story.
Right.
To really understand Dickinson, you have to look at her influences, the writers who helped to shape her unique voice. So who were her literary heroes? I know she was a huge fan of Shakespeare.
Shakespeare was her North Star, as she called him.
Wow.
His mastery of language, the psychological depth of his characters, that definitely had an impact on her.
Yeah.
But she was also deeply influenced by the Bible.
Okay.
You see those biblical themes of resurrection, judgment, the afterlife,
Right.
woven throughout her work.
It's interesting, though, because she wasn't just echoing those traditional religious ideas.
Oh, right.
She was questioning them, wrestling with them, finding her own way to articulate her understanding of faith and doubt.
Exactly. And you can't forget the influence of the Transcendentalists, especially Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Okay.
His emphasis on individuality, intuition, the importance of connecting with nature,
Yeah.
that resonated with Dickinson's own desire to forge her own path, both in life and in her writing.
And wasn't she a fan of the Romantic poets, too?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of someone like John Keats, with his intense focus on beauty and mortality.
Keats, absolutely.
Yeah.
His sensuous imagery, his meditations on the ephemeral nature of beauty, that's all there in Dickinson's work.
Right.
She was drawn to those poets who weren't afraid to confront the big questions,
Yeah.
to explore the darker aspects of human experience.
And that brings us to what might be her most enduring legacy, her fascination with death.
Right.
I mean, I heard a fly buzz when I died. That title alone is enough to send shivers down your spine.
Right. And that poem is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Death is everywhere in Dickinson's poetry as a literal event, a metaphor, a philosophical concept.
Wow.
It's like she was constantly trying to understand it, to demystify it, to find a way to make peace with its inevitability.
But she doesn't shy away from the darkness, the fear, the uncertainty.
No, she doesn't.
I felt a funeral in my brain. She describes this descent into madness, into the abyss of the self,
Yeah.
using this incredibly vivid, almost claustrophobic imagery.
And then you have poems like Because I Could Not Stop for Death, where death is personified as this courteous gentleman taking her on a carriage ride towards eternity.
Yeah.
It's both eerie and strangely comforting, this idea of end death as a companion, a guide.
That's what's so captivating about her work.
Yeah.
She presents these contrasting views of death, leaving you to wrestle with the contradictions, to find your own interpretation.
Right.
It's like she's saying, here's what I've discovered, but don't take my word for it. Explore it for yourself.
Exactly.
Wow.
She's not preaching, she's inviting you into a dialogue, a shared exploration of these profound mysteries. And her unique style, the way she uses language, is crucial to that exploration.
Okay, so let's talk about that style.
All right.
Those dashes, the unconventional capitalization.
Right.
It's almost like a visual representation of her fragmented thought process.
Those dashes create these pauses, these moments of silence that force you to slow down, to pay attention,
Okay.
to really savor the words and the spaces between them.
And the capitalization. It's like she's highlighting certain words, giving them extra weight,
Yeah.
making them jump off the page.
It's a way of disrupting our expectations, making us see familiar words in a new light.
Okay.
And that's what Dickinson does so brilliantly. She takes everyday language and transforms it into something strange, unsettling, and ultimately profound.
So is that what drew Dreamlarking to I Heard a Fly Buzz? That sense of disruption, of finding the profound in the mundane.
It's definitely part of it.
Yeah.
But I think there's also a connection to the sonic qualities of her poetry.
Okay.
Those dashes create a kind of rhythm, a syncopated beat, that lends itself to a musical interpretation.
Interesting. So it's not just about the themes, it's about the way those themes are expressed.
Yeah.
The very texture of her language.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Dreamlarking, with his blend of heavy metal and hyperpop, is tapping into that texture, amplifying it,
Okay.
creating a sonic experience that mirrors the intensity and complexity of Dickinson's poetry. It's like he's translating her words into a new language, one that's both familiar and utterly alien.
Okay, so we've got this reclusive poet obsessed with death, a wild whimsicore remix, and a whole bunch of literary influences to unpack.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here?
Let's dive into I Heard a Fly Buzz When I Died itself.
Okay.
I think once we understand the nuances of that poem, we'll start to see how Dreamlarking built upon those foundations to create something truly unique.
Sounds good to me. Let's do it.
All right, so let's take a closer look at I Heard a Fly Buzz When I Died.
Okay.
It's a poem that's both deceptively simple and incredibly layered. The opening line, with its stark image of the buzzing fly, immediately sets the tone.
Yeah, you expect this solemn, reverent scene, the quiet passing of a soul, but instead you get this buzzing fly.
Exactly.
It's so unexpected.
Yeah.
So jarring.
It undercuts any romanticized notions of death.
Right.
It's a reminder that even in death, the mundane realities of life persist. And that fly isn't just a random detail.
Okay.
It becomes the central symbol, this embodiment of disruption, of the intrusion of the ordinary into the extraordinary.
I'm seeing why Dreamlarking was drawn to this poem. It's like he took that buzzing fly and turned it into a sonic explosion.
Yeah.
A disruption of our expectations about what a Dickinson poem should sound like.
That's a great connection. And think about how the poem itself creates that sense of disruption through its structure, through those dashes that interrupt the flow of the lines, forcing us to pause, to pay attention to the spaces between the words.
You're right. It's like those dashes are little sonic jolts, mirroring the buzzing of the fly, creating this sense of unease, of anticipation.
And then you have those capitalized words, like stillness heaves, king, fly, light, windows. It's as if she's shining a spotlight on those words, giving them extra weight, making them reverberate in the silence.
It's like she's creating a soundtrack with her punctuation.
Yeah.
A series of sonic cues that guide us through the poem, building tension, creating suspense, and ultimately leading us to that final haunting image of the failing light.
Now, speaking of haunting images,
let's
move beyond the fly for a moment and consider the poem's larger context. Dickinson was surrounded by death. It was a constant presence in 19th century America, with high mortality rates due to disease and limited medical care.
And she experienced it firsthand. Several of her close friends and family members died during her lifetime. Which undoubtedly shaped her perspective on mortality.
Absolutely. And those personal losses are reflected in her poetry. Not just in I Heard a Fly Buzz, but in countless other poems where she grapples with the pain of separation, the mystery of the afterlife, and the enduring power of memory.
You mentioned Because I Could Not Stop for Death earlier. That poem also deals with death. But in a completely different way, right?
And Because I Could Not Stop for Death, death is personified as this gentle suitor, this courteous guide who leads her on a carriage ride through eternity.
Wow.
It's almost like a courtship.
Yeah.
This dance between the speaker and death.
And that imagery of the carriage ride.
Yeah.
It's so evocative. You can almost picture them traveling through time, passing by children playing fields of grain.
Yeah.
The setting sun.
Yeah.
It's both beautiful and unsettling.
Exactly. And that contrast between beauty and unease is one of the hallmarks of Dickinson's poetry. She doesn't shy away from the darkness, but she always finds these moments of light, these glimmers of hope, even in the face of death.
It's like she's saying, yes, death is inevitable, but there's also beauty, there's mystery, there's something that transcends our earthly understanding.
And that sense of transcendence, of reaching beyond the limitations of our physical existence, is also present in I Heard a Fly Buzz. Particularly in those final lines where the speaker describes the windows failing and her inability to see.
Like she's describing the moment of death itself. It's shutting down of the senses, the fading of light, the loss of consciousness.
But it's also suggestive of something more, something beyond the physical realm. Those failing windows could also be seen as a metaphor for the limitations of our earthly perception. The barriers that prevent us from fully comprehending the mysteries of life and death.
So in a way, the poem isn't just about death. It's about the limitations of human understanding, the things we can't fully grasp or explain.
That's a really insightful observation. And I think that's one of the reasons why Dickinson's poetry continues to resonate with readers centuries later. She doesn't offer easy answers. She doesn't try to explain away the mysteries of life and death. Instead, she invites us to embrace the ambiguity, to sit with the discomfort, to acknowledge the limits of our own knowledge.
It's like she's saying, it's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to be curious, to question, to explore the darkness as well as the light.
And that's a powerful message, especially in a world that often demands certainty. That encourages us to shy away from the difficult questions.
I think you're right. And it's something that Dreamlarking seems to understand. His whimsicore remix isn't just a celebration of Dickinson's poetry. It's an exploration of those same themes. Those same questions expressed through a different medium, a different language.
And that's what's so exciting about art, isn't it? It can transcend boundaries. Connect seemingly disparate ideas and challenge us to see the world in new and unexpected ways.
Okay, so we've talked about Dickinson's influences, her fascination with death, the nuances of I Heard a Fly Buzz, and the connections to Dreamlarking's remix. What about her legacy? How did her work influence other writers?
Well, her influence is vast and varied. But one writer who immediately comes to mind is Sylvia Plath. You can definitely see echoes of Dickinson's confessional style, her exploration of death and the self in Plath's work.
That's interesting. They both had this raw, unflinching honesty in their writing. This willingness to delve into the darkest corners of their own psyches.
Exactly. And they both challenged poetic conventions, experimenting with language, form, and structure in ways that were both groundbreaking and controversial.
I'm also thinking of Adrienne Rich. Didn't she admire Dickinson for her independence? And her refusal to conform to societal expectations.
Absolutely. Rich saw Dickinson as a feminist icon. A woman who dared to be different, who carved out her own space in a male-dominated literary world.
And then there's Robert Frost, though his style is quite different from Dickinson's.
True, but Frost shared Dickinson's appreciation for the natural world, for the power of observation, and for the ability to convey profound truths in simple, everyday language.
It's amazing to think how this one poet who lived such a secluded life could have had such a profound impact on so many writers across different generations and genres.
It speaks to the timeless quality of her work, the universality of her themes, and the sheer brilliance of her poetic voice. Her poems continue to challenge, inspire, and provoke us, reminding us that even in death, there is beauty, there is mystery. There is something that transcends our earthly understanding.
So after this deep dive into Emily Dickinson's life and poems, and even that whimsicore remix, what's the one thing you hope our listener takes away from all this?
Well, I think It's important to remember that Dickinson's poetry isn't just about death or isolation, even though those themes are definitely there.
Right. It's so much more than that.
Yeah. It's about grappling with life's big questions, about finding beauty and meaning in the everyday, and expressing those incredibly complex emotions in a truly unique and powerful way.
I love that. It's about finding those glimmers of hope and wonder,
right?
Even when facing death or uncertainty.
Exactly.
It's like she's saying, embrace the paradox, the mystery, the things we can't fully understand.
And her legacy is incredible. Think of all the writers, artists, and musicians inspired by her work.
Right.
Who found ways to translate her voice into new mediums and genres.
It really speaks to the enduring power of her words. Her ability to connect with people across generations.
Absolutely.
Almost like art itself is a bridge connecting us to each other. To different times and cultures, even to something larger than ourselves.
And Dickinson, with her timeless themes and unconventional style, continues to build those bridges. Sparking conversations and challenging us to see the world in new ways.
Which brings us back to that question we posed earlier. Would Emily Dickinson have been a metalhead?
Well, maybe not. But I think she would have appreciated the audacity, the passion, that willingness to push boundaries that you find in heavy metal, in whimsicore, really in any art form that dares to be different.
She was a rebel in her own right, wasn't she?
Yeah, sure.
Challenging poetic conventions, exploring taboo subjects, and living life on her own terms.
And that might be the connection, that common thread. Using art to challenge, provoke, explore those depths of human emotion, and ultimately find meaning in a world that often feels chaotic and uncertain.
Beautifully said. So for you listening, here's a thought to leave you with.
Okay.
Go back and reread Dickinson's poems. Listen to that whimsicore remix again. Pay attention to the details, the nuances, how those words and that music make you feel.
Ask yourself, what connections can you draw between her poetry and heavy metal? Does it change how you see either one? What does it tell you about yourself? About your relationship with art? With life? With the mysteries that surround us all?
Keep exploring, keep questioning, keep diving deep.
Absolutely.
That's it for our deep dive into the world of Emily Dickinson.
All right.
Until next time, happy listening.